Before we dive in, take a moment to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this video with friends who love history and mysteries. And right now, tell me in the comments, have you ever heard about the mysterious letter that Pontius Pilate supposedly sent to Emperor Tiberius describing Jesus? Do you think it's real? Get ready to find out. Imagine the Roman Empire at its height. Imperial decrees in Latin sealed with wax, letters carried by couriers across seas and deserts. Now picture Pontius Pilate, the prefect of Judea, sitting in his Jerusalem palace, writing a dramatic, almost worshipful description of a man he condemned to die. A letter so glowing, so reverent, it would shock Caesar himself. That is the claim behind a set of writings often called Pilate's letter to Tiberius. Versions of this letter claim Pilate wrote to the emperor about Jesus, describing him as strikingly handsome, with calm dignity, unmatched moral power, and even miraculous signs. These texts describe his hair color, skin tone, eyes, and a quiet authority that left even his accusers trembling. According to these writings, Pilate was so awestruck that he pleaded with Rome for guidance, almost defending Jesus. It is a powerful story. The idea that the Roman official who authorized Jesus' crucifixion actually admired him deeply, that he even tried to justify himself to the emperor by praising this unusual Galilean. It is precisely this shocking twist that has fascinated believers for centuries. But is there any truth to it? These so-called letters circulate widely online and in popular devotional traditions. The video you might have seen claims to reveal the actual text. It reads like a testimony in Pilate's own words, praising Jesus as if writing a recommendation letter for sainthood. It describes his eyes as clear and piercing, his face as serene and mild, his hair as flowing with rich color. It claims Pilate saw Jesus heal the sick, calm storms, and even rise from the dead. Many find this account moving. It feels like a final exoneration, a witness from Rome itself that Jesus was innocent, even divine. But let's stop for a moment and ask, where did this letter come from? Is there any record of it in the archives of the Roman Empire? Any mention from Roman historians like Tacitus, Suetonius, or Pliny? The answer is none at all. So where did this letter originate? Why was it written? And why does it keep resurfacing, even in the age of the internet? This is what we'll uncover in today's video. We'll walk through the text itself, trace its murky origins in ancient apocryphal literature, compare it with the real historical Pilate, and see why scholars reject it as authentic. But even as we debunk its historical accuracy, we'll see how its emotional power has shaped popular faith and art for centuries. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why historians dismiss the letter as legend, but also why so many have loved to believe in it. Stay with me, because the story of Pilate's supposed letter is just getting started. In the next section, we will dive into the content of the letter itself, its dramatic language, its rich descriptions of Jesus, and the specific phrases that have dazzled readers for generations. Make sure you stick around and remember to leave a comment below. Do you believe this letter is real, or is it just another pious fraud? Your opinion matters. Welcome back. Let's look closely at the content of this so-called letter of Pilate to Tiberius. This is the part that hooks so many people. The text doesn't read like a dry bureaucratic report. It's more like a reverent tribute. The letter claims that Jesus was of striking appearance, with a certain brightness or serenity in his face. His hair is described as rich in color, sometimes reddish golden or wine dark, flowing to his shoulders in gentle waves. His eyes are described as clear, radiant, piercing, with a look that seems to see right through you. These descriptions were not taken from any gospel. The canonical Gospels never describe Jesus' physical features. They focus on his teachings, miracles, betrayal, and resurrection. But they never tell you his hair color or skin tone. That's one of the biggest clues about the apocryphal nature of these letters. The letter goes further. It talks about crowds pressing around Jesus, amazed at his kindness and power. It claims Pilate saw him heal the sick, restore sight to the blind, even raise the dead. The letter paints Pilate almost as a secret disciple, reluctantly carrying out the sentence under pressure from the mob. It portrays him as deeply troubled, convinced of Jesus' innocence, and practically begging Tiberius for advice or absolution. Many versions even describe supernatural events at the crucifixion: earthquakes, darkness, signs in the sky, graves opening, and even rumors that Jesus rose from the dead. These dramatic elements echo biblical accounts but turn up the volume. They try to make the letter sound like an eyewitness document that confirms everything Christians believe, with even a Roman governor testifying under oath. When read aloud or dramatized, this letter can be compelling. It has poetic descriptions, moral tension, and a built-in sense of vindication for believers. No wonder it has been copied, translated, and adapted into countless devotional books, sermons, and even YouTube videos, with ominous music and cinematic voiceovers. But let's be clear. Historically speaking, there is no record, none at all, that Pontius Pilate wrote such a letter. The Roman Empire was thorough in its record-keeping. Emperors received regular reports from governors, but nothing like this letter survives in any imperial archive. Tacitus, writing in the early 2nd century, refers to Jesus' execution under Pilate, but in a single dry sentence. Suetonius, Pliny the Younger, no one mentions Pilate describing Jesus in admiring mystical language. Even Jewish historian Flavius Josephus mentions Pilate's role in Jesus' death, but portrays him as a harsh, stubborn governor who angered the local population repeatedly. There's no hint of him admiring Jesus, let alone writing a letter praising his divinity. So where did this letter come from? Why did it appear at all? In our next segment, we'll trace its murky origins in the early centuries of Christianity. Stick around as we uncover how these legends took shape and spread, even fooling many well-meaning believers. Remember, I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you think such a letter could have existed? Or does it sound like a story crafted to inspire faith? Let me know. Now let's dig into the historical roots of this letter. Scholars generally agree that the so-called letter of Pilate to Tiberius is part of a wider tradition of Christian apocrypha. These were writings outside the New Testament, often created to fill in gaps in the biblical story or to defend Christianity against pagan critics. During the 2nd and 3rd centuries, Christians faced mockery, persecution, and official suspicion from the Roman Empire. Critics called them criminals, atheists for rejecting the Roman gods, and even accused them of bizarre rituals. Christians needed to defend their faith, and one strategy was to create texts that answered accusations. Some of these texts claimed to be eyewitness reports from key figures, like Pontius Pilate himself. One famous collection is the so-called Acts of Pilate, also known as the Gospel of Nicodemus. This text is much longer, containing dramatic courtroom scenes, testimonies from Jewish leaders, and a detailed account of Jesus' trial, death, and resurrection. The supposed letter to Tiberius is often bundled with these writings or inspired by them. In these apocryphal texts, Pilate is not the cruel Roman official described by Josephus and Philo. Instead, he is a tortured, conflicted man forced to condemn someone he knows is innocent. He often becomes a tragic figure, even a reluctant witness to Jesus' divinity. Some versions even portray Pilate as a convert to Christianity who regrets his role forever. Why write such stories? Simple. They offered early Christians a powerful apologetic tool. By making the Roman governor confess Jesus' innocence and divine power, these texts sought to silence critics who said Christianity was dangerous or false. Imagine telling pagan neighbors, even your Roman governor admitted Jesus was God. It was an effective argument, even if it was fictional. The letter's elaborate physical description of Jesus also reflects cultural tastes of the time. Greco-Roman literature often described heroes and philosophers in glowing physical terms. By making Jesus beautiful and noble-looking, these texts appealed to readers who valued classical ideals of beauty and virtue. But none of these texts were official Roman records. They were devotional fiction, designed to encourage faith, strengthen communities, and convince outsiders. They were copied and recopied across centuries, eventually ending up in medieval manuscripts, church art, and modern videos. In the next section, we'll compare these legends with the real Pontius Pilate we know from historical sources. We'll see just how different the real man was from the almost saintly figure in these letters. Stay with me, and don't forget to drop a comment. Do you think these apocryphal stories are harmless inspirations or dangerous distortions of history? I want to know your thoughts. Let's turn now to the real historical Pontius Pilate. Who was this man really? How did he govern Judea? And do any of his real writings survive? Pilate was the Roman prefect of Judea from around 26 to 36 CE. He was appointed by Emperor Tiberius and served under the authority of the governor of Syria. The New Testament Gospels describe him as reluctant to execute Jesus, washing his hands to declare himself innocent of his blood. But even in the Gospels, he ultimately caves to political pressure and sentences Jesus to be crucified. Other sources paint an even harsher picture. The Jewish philosopher Philo of Alexandria describes Pilate as stubborn, cruel, and prone to violence. Philo accuses him of executing people without trial and provoking the Jewish population with insensitive religious policies. Flavius Josephus, the first-century Jewish historian, reports multiple clashes between Pilate and the Jews, including a brutal suppression of a protest in which his soldiers slaughtered demonstrators. Roman historian Tacitus, writing around 116 CE, briefly mentions that Jesus suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of Pontius Pilate. That is all he says. No lavish descriptions, no admiration, no letter to the emperor. No genuine Roman records mention Pilate writing anything about Jesus to Tiberius. If such a letter existed in the imperial archives, historians would expect to see at least traces of it in Roman or Jewish sources. But there is nothing. The so-called letter is absent from official records, papyri, inscriptions, and even the most hostile or curious pagan writers of the time. This historical Pilate was no secret admirer of Jesus. He was a pragmatic, often ruthless colonial governor. His job was to maintain order in a volatile province. If he saw Jesus as a threat to stability, he had him executed. That's it. No supernatural visions, no poetic descriptions of Jesus' eyes or hair, no dramatic appeals to Rome for mercy or understanding. So where does that leave us with the letter? It is, by all serious historical standards, a late Christian forgery, a work of pious imagination. It reflects the hopes and convictions of early believers who wanted validation from the very empire that persecuted them. It is not an authentic Roman document. It tells us more about the faith of its authors than about the facts of history, but that doesn't mean it is useless. In our final section, we'll talk about why these texts still matter, what they reveal about the psychology of faith, and why people keep sharing them even today. Before we do, remember to leave your thoughts in the comments. Have you been surprised by what you've learned so far? Does it change how you see the letter? Let's discuss. We have reached the final part of our journey into the mystery of Pilate's supposed letter. Let's ask, if it's a forgery, why do people keep believing it? Why does it keep resurfacing in videos, books, and sermons? The answer lies in the human need for validation. Early Christians lived in a world that mocked and persecuted them. For them, the idea that even Rome's own governor acknowledged Jesus' innocence was deeply comforting. It gave them hope that truth would eventually shine through, even in the heart of the empire. It transformed Pilate from a villain into an accidental witness for Christ. This letter, and others like it, also filled gaps in the gospel narratives. People have always wanted to know what Jesus looked like. The Bible is silent on that question. These apocryphal writings stepped in to supply vivid, often idealized descriptions. They gave believers a mental image, beautiful, noble, powerful, that aligned with their cultural ideals of a divine teacher. Over centuries, these texts were copied, translated, and included in medieval legends. Painters used them to imagine Christ's face. Preachers used them to awe congregations. Today, videos on YouTube narrate them with solemn voices, dark music, and dramatic imagery. For many, they still carry emotional power, even if they are historically baseless. But as students of history, we have to be careful. The fact that something is old, moving, or popular does not make it true. Serious scholars have examined these letters and found no evidence of their authenticity. They are not in Roman archives. They are absent from serious ancient historians. Their style matches religious propaganda, not Roman bureaucracy. It is important to remember that Pilate was no Christian. He was a colonial administrator whose job was to keep order in Judea. He executed Jesus as a threat to stability, under pressure from local leaders and the crowd. There is no sign he admired Jesus, wrote about his beauty, or converted. So when you see videos claiming shocking letters of Pilate describing Jesus's color and face, remember to question them. Ask for the sources, check the evidence. Don't be fooled by dramatic music and solemn narration. Before you go, I have a request. Please comment below and tell me, do you believe this letter could be real? Or do you see it as an inspiring legend, but not historical fact? Let's talk about it. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with friends who love history and want to know the truth behind the myths. Help this channel grow so we can keep bringing you honest, well-researched content. And finally, let's be clear. There is no evidence that Pontius Pilate ever wrote such a letter to Tiberius describing Jesus in these terms. It is a legend, a beautiful, haunting, but ultimately fictional testament to the hopes and dreams of believers centuries after the fact. Let's honor the truth, even when it is less convenient than the legend. Thank you for watching.